So let's talk a little bit more specifically about the 4 Ds and the things that the Muskego Norway School District is doing and you can do to reduce the risk of transmission. Let's first talk about density. We will be reducing class sizes as best as possible, and we will be limiting visitors to the schools. Pickup and drop-off times are going to be different, with different locations potentially being used. We are going to be monitoring bathroom use of students so that there's not much congregation, and lunch times and hall passing times will also look different, again, to avoid congregation or that density of people. Duration we talked about a little bit. That means maybe using something virtual to reduce the time that you have to spend face-to-face with somebody, but I'm sure you can think of other situations where the duration can be limited. It could be using email more frequently, or it could be putting things in smaller chunks, maybe instructional time in smaller chunks, so that the duration that you have with a given student is less than 15 minutes in total in a 24-hour period. And the same can be true for staff interactions, and this can also hold true in your personal lives, where the transient passing with somebody for a short amount of time is really not that big of a deal, but certainly keep in mind that 15-minute duration and minimizing it in any way possible. Maintaining distance from others is very important. We all know about the 6-foot distance and the fact that you may have to expand that distance in circumstances such as singing or instrument playing or yelling. So a few other things that we are doing in the district is that we are designating seating and putting markers on the floor that are 6 feet apart for common areas. We are going to have traffic patterns that reduce the times where people will have to even transiently pass within 6 feet. So those will be evaluated to make sure that they are the most minimal duration as possible. And droplets. Let's talk about respiratory droplets. That is the primary mode of transmission for COVID-19. And really everything that we are doing, whether it's distancing or reducing duration, is to reduce the exposure to the droplets. So the virus is carried in respiratory droplets that in normal speech can be transmitted within a 6-foot radius, typically 3 feet. But also in some circumstances, as we've said, the droplets can go beyond that. There is an idea about aerosol transmission that the research hasn't quite fleshed out yet, meaning that are there viral particles in small, I wouldn't even call them droplets, they're a mist, an aerosol that's not really even visible, that can stay in a room and permeate the room. And we sometimes have heard about some of the research with that in, say, a call center or a choir room, where we think that it's been the aerosol that has carried the virus throughout the distance of a room and infected others. The research really hasn't borne out the aerosol transmission yet, but we are quite firm on the idea that the 6-foot droplet transmission is the primary mode. So what are some things that you can do? Barriers. That is where the mask comes in, or the face covering comes in. That is where the plexiglass partitions on the desks and other common areas come into play. And certainly any other barrier to a droplet that you can even improvise in the moment, whether it's in your personal life, as you're walking down the street, placing a barrier between your droplets and others is going to go a long way to help with this process. One other point to make about droplet transmission, and this goes to whether or not droplets fall onto surfaces and then can be transmitted. Yes, indeed, we are in the Muskego Norway School District cleaning surfaces, especially high-touch surfaces, frequently. And you need to be aware that when a droplet comes out of your nose or mouth, it does land on the surface and it can live for a period of time. We've heard the research shows that it can live for 24 hours, up to 36 hours, depending on the type of surface. That is true. However, it is not a primary mode of transmission. And the virus, in order to live on those surfaces, has to have a protein medium to live in. So simple cleaning of these surfaces with a disinfectant wipe or spray really does mitigate that risk.